She had grown up in quiet obscurity at the edge of the valley, where cold mist settled in the dawn and the wind whispered through pine branches. Her name was Seraphine, and at 20 years old she remained untouched, a delicate flower never plucked, a secret held in a trembling hand. The villagers often whispered of her pale skin, her silken dark hair and the strange stillness in her eyes, as though she watched scenes no one else could see. Her father, a humble woodcutter, and her gentle mother had raised her with devotion, shielding her from gossip and ambition. But in a land where titles mattered more than hearts, that protection would prove brittle. In that autumn of change, the Baron's decree came down as a hammer blow. The rich and ruthless Baron Alderic, whose name alone made grown men avert their eyes, had demanded a bride, one unblemished, pure, someone new to the world of power and fear. No one dared approach him. No one had the courage to ask his favor. He lived behind iron gates in a fortress of stone and secrets. But the Baron had heard of Seraphine's beauty and the purity of her reputation. So at 20 she was given to him, still untouched. It was not a marriage, people said, but an offering. The villagers gathered in hushed crowds when the decree was announced. They spoke with bowed heads, voices trembling. Such a prize, yet none dared step forward. The Baron, he's a specter in daylight. No man has claimed his favor. They say his halls are haunted by old sins. No voice echoes through his fortress. But to take that maiden, is it mercy or cruelty masked? Seraphine felt her world narrow that morning. Her mother wept in the kitchen, clutching her apron while her father, stoic, with calloused hands, placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You are strong," he whispered in a voice that quavered. "You must be strong now." She looked into his eyes, where pride and sorrow dwelt side by side. She imagined the forests they had roamed, the quiet glades bathed in dawn light, the laughter they shared by the creek, all fading behind the walls that now awaited her. She packed the few things she owned: a simple linen gown, a locket with her mother's portrait, a few sewing tools, a small leather-bound journal. The villagers, as they saw her leave, looked away, fearful to meet her gaze. Mothers hushed children. The old men lowered their eyes. When Seraphine's carriage wound toward the Baron's estate, the air thickened with apprehension. The road climbed through twisted woods, and black pines arched overhead like silent sentinels. The gate loomed, wrought in black iron with gargoyles carved in shadow. 2 sentries, clad in dusky armor, stood rigid on either side. They gave no welcome. They gave no glance. The doors opened with a groan, and the carriage rolled through into a courtyard of gray stone and silence. There was no fanfare, no orchestra, no trumpets, only the wind. The mansion's windows stared like dead eyes. Seraphine's heart hammered as she stepped down. She touched the cold stone of the steps and a shiver ran through her. From the shadows came a figure, tall, cloaked in black velvet, a wide-brimmed hat brimmed low and hid his eyes. The Baron. He advanced in silent dignity, hands folded before him. His face, when he raised the brim, was sharp and angular cheekbones, a strong jaw, pale skin unmarred by time. His eyes were dark as midnight, unreadable. His voice, when he spoke, was soft but carried the weight of power. "Welcome, Seraphine," he said. "You are here now. I hope you will find your place." She could not answer. Her throat felt parched. She bowed humbly. He nodded once, then turned, leading her through great doors into the halls of his domain. Inside, the corridors stretched in gloom. Tapestries hung heavy, walls echoed absence, and the air smelled of dust and old perfumes. Candles flickered, casting dancing shadows across high ceilings. Servants in black livery glided silently, heads down, moving as though haunted. Seraphine's senses sharpened. She heard whispers behind heavy curtains, felt cold drafts, detected strange flickers at the edge of her vision. The Baron gave her a chamber, austere, with high windows, deep curtains, a bed draped in sable cloth. No painting hung on the walls except one, a solitary portrait of a woman, whose eyes seemed to follow her. She asked, trembling, "Who is she?" He paused, then said quietly, "My mother." She studied the painting. The woman bore the same dignity and the same haunting sadness that filled the halls. The Baron turned and left, his footsteps echoing away, leaving her alone in the hush of stone and shadows. Nights in the mansion were restless. She lay awake, listening to the house breathe. Floorboards creak, wind sighs through narrow slits, distant steps in corridors. Once she thought she heard a soft sob. Or was it the wind? She sat up, stared into darkness. If she closed her eyes, she felt a presence waiting. In the days that followed, Seraphine walked through the estate under the silent gaze of servants. Meals were brought silently. No companion joined her. The Baron appeared occasionally, silent, distant, commanding respect without words. He never touched her. No dinner invitation, no conversation. Some nights she saw him on a balcony, staring into the far hills, cloaked by moonlight. Yet she refused to wither. She wrote in her journal by candlelight, capturing her fears, her longing for home, fragments of dreams. She wandered the gardens, overgrown labyrinths of hedgerows, stone fountains dry, tangled vines climbing pillars. There she sometimes glimpsed the Baron passing by, his cloak drifting behind him. The wind named him in her thoughts, the silent Baron. She began to sense that something was wrong. Whispers in hallways, inchoate cries behind locked doors. Sometimes a servant's eyes would flicker, with guilt or fear when she looked their way, but they would not speak. She asked questions. Is there a sick employee? A tragedy? A secret? They shook their heads and fled. One afternoon, while exploring a remote wing, Seraphine stumbled across a hallway that was dimmer than the others. The walls were lined with portraits, ancestors of the Baron, stern faces draped in layers of dust. At the end of the hall stood a heavy door, partially ajar. A faint light glowed within. She pushed it carefully, and saw a large room filled with trunks, silks, and old letters scattered across a faded desk. The scent of old paper and dried flowers was strong. On the walls were sketches, maps, cryptic symbols. She sensed that these were not mere keepsakes, but clues into a secret locked away. At that moment she heard a sound, footsteps approaching. Panic pinned her heart. She closed the door swiftly and retreated down the hall, breath shaking. She leaned against the wall, pressing her palm to her chest, feeling the thunder of her heart. Who had seen her? Who else had access to this room? That night she resolved to learn more. If the Baron would not speak, she would read the signs. She lit a small candle and crept down dark halls. She carried her journal, a small knife in her cloak. She paused outside that locked room, listening. The candlelight inside flickered. She thought she saw movement. But when she tried the door, it was locked tight. The next evening, the Baron invited her to the banquet hall. The servants arranged a long table lit by torches, the walls heavy with velvet drapes, the air pungent with roasted meats and spices. Yet the Baron remained distant, seated at the head, face harsh and expressionless. She sat opposite him, her gown pale in the torchlight. She looked into his eyes, hoping for warmth, but he remained cold, reserved. Then a hush fell. A knock echoed at the door. A young woman in tattered clothing was brought in, trembling. The servants placed her by the Baron, her eyes wide in terror. The room watched in silence. The Baron stood with sudden authority. "Let her speak," he commanded. She whispered, "My lady." "Forgive me. I served here. I know things. I saw—" She stopped. The Baron's gaze was ice. He said, "Leave now." The servants dragged her out. The hush deepened, bones heavy in the room. Seraphine's heart pounded. Questions flared in her mind. What did she see? What is hidden behind these walls? After the banquet, as guests left, the Baron lingered. He came to her side. She held her breath. For a moment she saw, faintly, something flicker in his eyes. Pity? Sadness? But then he withdrew behind his mask. "Rest," he said, and left. Seraphine stood, trembling. The night seemed colder than before. Outside, the wind moaned, the walls whispered. She knew she could not remain passive. She would not be a trophy, a ghost in these halls. She must breathe life into this silence. Unearth the secret that bound her to this Baron. As she climbed to her room, her heart heavy with fear and determination, she heard a soft clink below, a metal key turning in a far door. The echo carried through the stillness. She froze, listening. The key turned, the lock clicked. She pressed herself into shadow, heart hammering. And then she recognized that sound. It was the same old key she had seen behind the locked wing's door earlier. Someone was unlocking that forbidden room. The chapter ends in silence, with Seraphine frozen in darkness, waiting to see who emerges. Her breath held, the mansion alive with secrets, the Baron's silence more terrifying than any storm.